going to go ahead and call to order our regularly scheduled Utility Service Board meeting of July 5th. And our first order of business is approval of the minutes of the previous meeting. Do we have a motion for approval of those minutes?
So moved.
Second.
And any questions about the minutes? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next up are the claims. We have 5 different types of claims tonight. The first is our standard invoices for $555,060.01. Any questions about the claims for standard invoices? No questions tonight. Okay, hearing none. All in favor of approving the standard invoices, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Next up, we have a set of utility bills totaling $59,197.45. Any questions about the utility bills? Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? And wire transfers totaling $368,521.14. Any questions about the wire transfers? Do you have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? We have 2.
I believe we missed doing the motion in a second when we approved the standard invoices. We did the vote, but we didn't make the motion.
You gonna do the vote?
I heard that also.
Yeah,
We missed a motion and a vote for a motion and a second for the standard invoices. So we voted without a motion?
I don't recall the vote, but I know we
Yes.
missed the.
Yes, what? We need to do both the motion, a second, and the vote?
Yeah.
Okay. Do we have a motion for approval of the standard invoices?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Thank you for that. Megan? Next up, we have customer refunds totaling $2,550.30. Any questions about the customer refunds? Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? And then finally, a special check run for our solar panel payment totaling $225,358.04. Any questions about the special check run? Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask someone, maybe James or Vic, how are the solar panels doing in terms of cost saving or not?
I don't know the detailed numbers off the top of my head. Is Nolan here? Oh, Nolan's covering the meeting, so we can get that information and send it to
I'd
you.
appreciate it.
Yep.
if Next meeting.
Yep, we'll
during
do
the
it next time.
reports.
We will.
Any other questions on the special check run? Do we have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. That is all of the claims. I'm going to pass these. We're going to use a ink signature today for the first
Okay.
time in quite a while. So next up, we have approval of the consent agenda. We have 3 items totaling $7,730.00. Vic Kelson.
Good evening, everyone. I'd like to present the consent agenda. The first item is to Mitchell and Stark Construction. This is a no-cost extension of the completion date for the chemical feed improvements at Monroe Water Treatment Plant. The second item is to Heflin Industries, $3,730 for backflow testing and maintenance at all three of our plants. This is a regular maintenance activity. And the last is to Holsapple Communications Incorporated. This is an additional $4,000, and it's an amendment to increase the not to exceed number to $10,000. This is the firm that is assisting us with public outreach and public information regarding the lead service line inventory project. Would any of the board members like to take any of these up individually? Hearing none, if there's no opposition, the consent agenda will be approved as recommended by staff. With no opposition, the consent agenda is approved. Thank you.
Thank you, Vic. Next up, we have a request for approval of an agreement with Christopher Burke Engineering for Lake Lemon Coffer Dam design work not to exceed $47,200. Phil Peden.
Good evening, Phil Peden, Engineering Group. This agreement that you have in front of you does not have the signatures. Vic, do you want me to cover that? As far as we typically have those signatures to you ahead of time. So we still wanted to present it to the board, and then if you can make the decision, if you, Mr. Wheeler was suggesting maybe you could look at it and still vote, and then once we get the signatures, sign it after that point. But we want to make progress on this project, and so would like to present it this evening. So this is for preliminary engineering design for cofferdams around the trestle at Shuffle Creek on the south side of Lake Lemon. And it is to create the design for cofferdams so that the members of the trestle and the footers are no longer inundated by any water that might stage above them and cause damage to them. So that's the basis. The cost of the contract is $47,200. Here to answer any questions. Chris, would you like to add anything?
I do have a question. So I just looked into this a little bit, looking at it on Google Maps. I mean, I've driven by it, but I can see that there's the back, the shallow water wetland area. Looks like maybe some lotus or something growing in there. And then there's a stream over on the east side. Looks like maybe there's six I don't know what those structures are, the individual structures are called, but the supports. And it said that the trestle was built in about 1906. The lake was built in 1953. So what is the immediacy? What's the need for doing this now? And how is it that USB is, or the City of Bloomington Utilities is responsible for this work? Those are my two questions.
Good questions.
Trestle long predates the existence of the lake. When the city built the lake, the city signed a contract with the railroad. At the time, it was the Illinois Central, I believe. That contract states that the city is responsible for repairs to any damages that should be done to those support piers that might have been caused by inundation. So over time, that lake, when we get large rain events especially, the lake can pool up over there. And it will pool up sometimes for extended periods of time. The railroad has repaired these piers a number of times in the past. The board might recall 3 or 4 years ago, we paid around $170,000 for some repairs that were done there. The railroad would like to improve the situation. They've made some proposals that we have not been interested in simply pursuing because they're very costly. To say remove disconnect the trusses and then pour the piers taller or whatnot, that's a very expensive operation. We've been working with the railroad now for, good grief, going on 4 or 5 years, talking about a long-term solution there. The city owns the lake, and we continue to be responsible for the lake and for the contract that was signed in 1952. We also understand that a lot of the benefits of the lake now are mostly accruing to the people who live surrounding the lake, not as much to the city, although the lake could potentially be an emergency source of water for the city and under certain unforeseen circumstances in the future. That wouldn't be enough water to provide the current flow to the city, but potentially could be suitable for maintaining fire flow or emergency source of water for a short period of time. What we're proposing to explore here is the possibility of building a cofferdam that would, it's basically a small dam that would be around the piers that would prevent the water from inundating the piers, even when the water level in the lake went up. This would presumably be a lot cheaper than what the railroad had originally proposed. It could be, we've worked with the Lake Lemon Conservancy District on this proposal because they do dredging around the lake. So presumably this could be constructed with dredging spoils over time. If a project were pursued in the future to actually do this work to protect the railroad and eliminate the need for that contractual language, we would actually insist that requirement in the contract be eliminated, that we would have dealt with the problem and that there wouldn't be any need for the city to be held responsible for future damage to the railroad owing to the presence of the lake. So the purpose of this study is to look into a design and the cost of building the cofferdams, what approach could be taken, what kinds of permitting would be required, and then when the project was pursued, we would be trying to negotiate a cost-sharing arrangement between the utilities, the Lake Lemon Conservancy District, and the railroad. So the idea is not for us to take on the whole project, but for us, we're proposing to take on the cost of doing the study so that we can get this moving. We've been working on this for years. We've collected lots of data, and we're really prepared now at this point to propose this as a solution. So Phil knows the technical aspects of the project, but that's the background and how we got to be here.
Jim?
Yeah, Vic, thanks for that. Are you optimistic that the railroad will go along with this? If I were the railroad, kind of cutting out the responsibility of the city for any future things I might be wary of, sharing the costs I might be wary of. Do you have any feeling that there's optimism?
Well, the city's interest is in not being responsible
I
for any
understand.
damage to those piers.
Yeah, I
So
understand.
the purpose of the cofferdam would be to eliminate the risk of damage to the piers. If there's no risk of damage to the piers, then there would be no need for that provision in the contract. So it would be our expectation that we would certainly be trying to get out of it. I think that would certainly be something that could come up during negotiations.
Yeah, to say no risk is probably
Well, there's,
optimistic.
yeah, that's true, but how can I say that more clearly? No additional risk, because a steel structure that's standing out in the weather is always at risk of corrosion. What we'd be trying to do is eliminate the additional risk accruing to the structure from the presence of the lake. So that it's more of a no additional risk, I guess, is a better way to say it.
Yeah, I guess the point of my question is that it's not a lot of money for the study, but if you didn't have any feeling that the railroad would go along with this, then it may just be money after nothing.
Well, we're going to have to do something. So at some point, we're going to have to do something.
Okay.
So this appears to be the most cost-effective strategy that any of us has been able to come up with for dealing with the situation. And the railroad has not said clearly they don't want to trip the deal on the negotiations any more than we do, but they've not said that they wouldn't consider eliminating that language from the contract. Their issue is the long-term viability and the structural integrity of the.
And they
of the
are
trust.
interested in the concept of the dam.
They are. It's a much more cost-effective solution than what they had proposed.
Thank you.
Kirk?
Maybe feel it best for you to address this, but as you would give direction on the feasibility study, I'd ask that they take a look also at the different uses that the lake has. As we mentioned, the Conservancy District does dredging. There's recreational uses. There's, the residential docks and everything else. I guess the thing to look at is if we undertake a project like this, we should look at all of the different seasons of the year and uses and what's higher use and intensive use and things, when the least amount of disruption to the residents and other users, recreational users and others might be. I don't know when that would be because I don't know the scope of the project, the details, but as they look at this, I'd just ask that they would keep in mind those different constituents that the lake has. They're not all related to our use of water, but just like Lake Monroe, it wasn't really built for a water supply, but it built for flood control, but we use it for water and all sorts of other things. But we owe it to the folks that are up there and managing the Conservancy District to try to keep the disruptions to a minimum, whenever that might be.
Yep, that's a good point. I know that they do lower the lake annually for dock maintenance, so that might be a good time to time it during the winter.
Everybody has a warning and that sort of thing, yeah.
It's difficult to lower the dock in the winter, but they do lower the lake in the winter because of the higher rain events and the more frequent precipitation and the cooler weather. A few years ago when we went through, and I think Kirk, you were involved in that, when the lake had to be lowered to do the last round of maintenance on the piers. And one of the issues then was that IU has the rowing facility there.
Mm-hmm.
They were going to be having a large event.
Yeah.
So IU and the Conservancy District and CBU all worked together to come up with a calendar that worked.
Yeah.
And we did it right at the end of the summer when there was still a lot of precip and it wasn't raining very much, but that was still a bit of a hardship for the people in the shower portions of the lake.
Yeah, there's a lot of different uses. We just need to be mindful of being a good neighbor, knowing that we have to do this kind of work, but
Absolutely.
when would the least disruptive time be?
Absolutely.
Phil, I didn't really understand what a cofferdam was, so I looked it up, and I saw examples around bridge pilings, and I understand now that it's essentially a circular structure that excludes the water. So is it thought that by exposing the structure to air and maybe treating it, it's going to prevent it from degradation more so than keeping it submerged?
Well, I felt like the cofferdam was initially just to dry that area so you had a safe working environment. So then if we wanted to fill that area to get all that component above the water surface, is an option. I guess we're waiting to see what the engineers present on that, but I felt like it's really just a use so that you can work in that space or add some suitable fill material that will protect the entire column.
So empty it out of water, do whatever repairs needed, and then presumably possibly fill it up at a later time. Okay, I understand now. The one other question I had was about the wetland work, the wetland delineation. Given that it's not going to be a certified delineation or used for any permitting, what's the purpose of doing that work I mean, I looked at it, it looks like a wetland to me. Is that really necessary to do that?
The permitting within the watershed like that, in the 100-year floodplain, you know, you've got multiple permits through the Army Corps and IDEM, and so, especially when it's designated as a wetland. So one of the first things that almost any project that we complete, even if it's the sanitary sewer through the switch yard or other places, they're gonna look for a wetland delineation. That's gonna really affect the project. So I think that's just part of it, and you wanna make sure this component has they were clear not to say they're going to do the permitting for us, but they're gonna research the permitting. So it was like they in the scope of the work of this contract was a regulatory research. So they recognize each permit and what needs to be included in the design for the permit application, but that'll come along with final design.
I read it to be that the delineation itself would not be certifiable. And that was pretty clear language in there. So I'm wondering what the purpose of doing that is when it sure looks like a wetland. You know, why would they take why would we make the effort and take the expense to do that if that particular delineation can't be used for the permitting?
Yeah, I would have to think, I guess, ask the engineer, but to me, it's like they've got it pretty close and they're not gonna certify it till it's time to submit for the permit. But they have at least recognized if there's a wetland that's gonna affect the project. Yeah.
So it's more like just a standard part of preliminary design work like this?
Yeah, we really do see it
Okay.
in other projects, so.
Okay, knowing that we'd have to do it again, according to the contract, later.
Yeah, and I can make sure to clarify that with the engineer if that means, hey, did we do 80% in the preliminary engineering, now we just need to certify it and it's ready? I mean, that's what I presume.
Okay, okay. It's not having to redo the whole delineation. Okay, good.
No.
At this point, our goal is to see if this approach is viable. So we don't really need to do the whole delineation, we only need to know what we're going to have to expect, I think, at this point.
All right. Other questions? Okay.
I should say something that Chris Wheeler would have said. This contract, as Phil said, hasn't been signed by the contractor as yet, or we've not received the signed version. So the board has, basically, you could approve it with the caveat that it's not approved until it's been signed by the contractor and approved by the controller and the mayor. Your other alternative would be to simply table it for 2 weeks, and that would be entirely up to you which course you'd prefer at this point.
Yes.
I move that we approve it contingent on it getting signed.
Second.
Oh, all in favor of that approach? Say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you.
Thank you.
And next up, we have item number 6, request for approval of resolution 2022-04, smart meter installation billing adjustments.
I guess it's going to be me. When we replaced all the meters for the AMI project, there were more than 25,000 meters that were replaced. At the time that all of that happened, about half of our meters are actually in meter pits that have more than one meter in them. And we've found that there's a small number of cases where the 2 meters that were in the pits were identified as being connected to the wrong homes. So if you had meter A and meter B and house A and house B, meter B was reading the flow for house A and meter A was reading the flow for house B. We've had 47 instances that we found so far where that's happened out of 25,000. So that's really a very small percentage that we've had this happen so far. What we've been doing is that it's neither so basically one customer was getting the other customer's bills, fundamentally. Most of the time the differences were only nominal, just, not very much. But on occasion they turn out to be very pretty sizable. For example, we had one where one of the homes had a leak. but they were getting the bill for the house where there wasn't a leak. So months later, or years later, year and a half later, they get a large adjustment notice from us that they were going to have to pay for all the water loss for the leak. Even though we didn't tell them there was a leak, we never gave them a notice that there was a leak or anything like that. The problem is basically it doesn't seem appropriate for us to simply tell someone you have to, set up a payment plan for paying for water that we didn't tell you were using at the time that you used it. So what this resolution is about is to allow us, under our rules, to treat these as metering errors and simply waive this. So the customer who paid too much over that period of time gets a refund. The customer that didn't pay the full amount during that time doesn't get billed for the offset. So far, this would have, if we did it this way so far, it would be $10,000 so far for the 47 instances that we've had. That's 3 years. Thank you. That's 3 years worth of doing these. So this is our proposal. It seems to be the fairest thing to do for the customers. I'm happy to take any questions.
Amanda?
So, one just basic question, why do we need a resolution for this? Why is this not,
Because it's not clear. Normally, the way we would handle something like this is you have to pay for the water that went through the meter, even if you didn't know about it. So the idea here is to say, you didn't know the water went through the meter. We didn't tell you the water was going through the meter at the time. So typically, what we do in these cases is we do an adjustment for the previous 12 months. So what we're basically saying is, we're not going to adjust you up, but we will adjust you down, is
okay.
basically.
Well, I guess I'm just trying to figure out why we have to have a paper resolution to do this. Why can't it just be something that you brought to our attention and there were operational standards that you took care of it?
The purpose of the resolution is to document the fact that we've explained to you and that you approve of this approach.
So then my other question is, how did we find that, how are we finding this out? I'm just kind of curious about.
Yeah, I asked the same question. So imagine you're going to have a plumber come out to your home to work on something at your home. So the plumber or we go out and turn the water off. So we go out, we look at the meter, we look at the number on the meter and compare it to the number for your home. We close that meter and your water's still running. That's how we find out.
Okay, so, and is there a particular area where we're finding that these issues happened, or is it just kind of a random thing?
It's pretty much random.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if I were a customer concerned that maybe that this might be happening to me, is there something that you can do to look at it, or?
We don't have a formal approach to that. I don't, typically people discover it when they go to turn the water off for some reason.
Gotcha.
And that's probably the best way for us to approach it.
All right, awesome. Well, thank you.
If you want to call and ask us to turn your meter off, remember, there's a $45 fee for that, so you probably would.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you could just go and maybe turn on a sprinkler and see what your water meter's doing.
Well,
and-
exactly, yeah, that's true.
Okay, all right.
Jim?
So are we likely to see a few more of these?
I would expect so. There were, tens of thousands of these, and we found, 47 cases so far. So I wouldn't be surprised if we had a few more.
And in doing this, do you plan to notify the 94 people?
Actually, there's 95 because one of the pits had 3 meters in it, and 2 of them were switched. And when we went to fix it, we accidentally hooked one of them to the 3rd meter, so we had to do 3 of them in that case. So there were 95 meters in 47 incidents in this case. So, but it's a very tricky thing to fix, to be honest. So yes, we will notify everybody who's been affected, and we will make corrections accordingly.
Write a nice letter.
Huh?
Write a nice letter?
Yes, we'll write a nice letter.
Amanda?
I have one other question. Is there any ability for us to get some sort of adjustment or credit through the folks that did the installation? Because ultimately, they're the ones that made the errors on this. It's not CBU's error, it's the installers, correct?
This is something that we're still exploring.
Okay.
We'd have to go back and look at the contractual language. That's, of course, been closed for almost 2 years now. But one of the questions is if this turned out to be a really big problem when we went and investigated, if this had been something where we had $200,000 worth of these, we would certainly look into pursuing some sort of,
Well, it's no doubt. I mean, it
but
was
$10,000
a
is pretty
monster
small.
project. So to
Yeah.
have that small percentage of ones that had this happen, is good. But I do think it would be important to let them know, because it might have been a particular training error, or maybe it was an issue with somebody that was on the job.
It
I
could
don't-
be,
I mean,
and
it's
yeah.
hard to tell, like you said, it was 2 years ago, but to
We're
at least
still
have some
reviewing.
sort of communication with them.
Yes, we're still reviewing that aspect of it.
Great.
Yes, Megan.
And I came on the board right as these were being installed, I think because my first week on the board, and then my smart meter was installed. And so I was just wondering, again, 47 out of 25,000 is a low concern here, but and if it's this company that, or say if a new development here in town, are we installing those, or is the company installing those, and how do we prevent this from happening in new installations?
And new systems would be installed by the contractor that builds the system. And do we install the meters, or, yeah, I thought they'd said we would install the meters in those cases.
Okay.
We wouldn't be hiring someone to do that.
Thank you.
Jim?
One more question, Vic. I've been getting, and I guess part of it is good and part of it, maybe it's overkill. I'm getting about 3 notifications a day about overuse of water because all our stuff is dying without any rain and we're using more water, so I get it. So 2 questions. One is, how often do these get sent out? Because literally I'm getting 3 a day. And the other question is, are we still on that program where during the summer months, it's only the water that gets upped and the other is overlooked?
That's right. During the summer, we have the summer sewer average. So if you average, for example, 3 units a month during the drier, or the wetter part of, or the cooler part of the year, if you use 3 units a month, when summertime rolls around and suddenly you're using 6 units a month of water, you'll still only be charged for 3 units of sewer. So the average adjustment is made to the sewer portion of the bill, not the water portion.
Based on the April use, I
Yeah.
think, something like that. What about the notices? They just go out every
That's,
few hours?
I think it happens whenever the system detects that you've gone over this threshold that you set. So if you set your threshold at 50 gallons, then you'll get a lot more notices than if you set it at 150 gallons.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess there's also notices for daily use, weekly use.
Oh, that's right, too, yes. Uh-huh.
Okay. No, I'd rather get them than not, I'd rather get too many than not get any.
Yeah, exactly, yes.
Thank you.
I would like to try to recoup that cost, and so I'm wondering what amount of staff time and cost would it take to do that research of the contract and make that request?
Well, Chris is I've already been discussing with Chris, and he's looking into it.
Okay.
It ultimately probably turns into a legal question, so we'll look into that.
Okay, and even if it's, outside our legal rights, we can certainly make a request in
Certainly, yeah.
goodwill to this company that wants a good reputation, wants to continue its good reputation, presumably.
Yes, I've discussed that with Chris.
Thank you. So, let's see, we need a motion if there's no further questions.
So moved?
All in favor of approving Resolution 2022-04, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? All right. Next up, we have old business. Any old business from the board? Old business from staff?
None.
New business from the board? New business from staff?
None.
Subcommittee reports. Have we had any subcommittees?
Nope.
Okay, and staff reports.
I've just got a couple of things. The first one is continuing with the COVID sampling. We are still doing the COVID sampling. The most recent samples for June 26th were 260 gene copies per 100 milliliters at Blucher Pool and a non-detect at Dillman. Those numbers are both down significantly from the previous samples on June 19th. So we're going to continue that program. We expect we'll be meeting soon with a new faculty member at IU who will be able to do some sampling, and we're going to explore possibilities of working with the university on that. We've also been approached by another organization that is doing a study. I don't know all the details of it yet, but they are proposing to do 3 samples a week, and we will continue to explore that possibility in the next few weeks. So we are continuing, as you know, and we may see some changes in the program in the next month or two. The second thing is our financial contractor, Crow, has begun work on the financial analysis for the sewer works rate review. That the big CIP item in that rate case would be the completion of the uprating of the plant at Dillman Road, which would require some changes to our digesters and the existing aerobic digesters at Dillman Road. They're not going to be replaced with anaerobic. But that there is an additional project that follows on the project that we're finishing now. So that will be in there along with the usual maintenance items and so forth. The other rate review that we'll be bringing is for the stormwater fee. That is expected to include the new upstream inlets for the Hidden River Tunnel. We're finishing the middle portion of that tunnel now, but the upstream inlet is still not large enough. That was left that way on purpose because if that had been upsized, the tunnel couldn't have carried the water. So that project will happen next. We've been having discussions with IU. They'll be heavily involved in that because that inlet is right there at next to Franklin Hall. So there'll be some discussion about how that's all going to happen, where it's going to be located, and exactly how it will be constructed. So we're working with our engineer, the design work. We're also working with IU on all of that. That project would also be pursued aggressively because we all saw what happened with the flooding last June. We want to make sure that we get that project done in a timely fashion when the current project is complete. So our target is to take this to the council in November, so we would be presumably coming to the board in October with it. And that's all I have.
Kirk?
That'll start at Indiana. How far west does it go, southwest?
That
The rebuild.
portion, Brad, how far does that go?
Not very far. It ties in right near Kirkwood, so it goes behind the Von Lee.
Uh-huh.
And makes a turn and ties in there. We've completed up to that portion. So it's
You
not
you think maybe up to the alley or further south?
I think it's up to the bike shop.
Yeah. I think
Right near
it's
People's Park.
All the way through behind, so you get to Dunn the next street there.
Dunn is the next street,
so it's
yeah.
Dunn.
There's a lot of buried infrastructure through
Yeah.
there. And IU's got major power, I think, going through there, so.
Probably, yeah, I think that's right. And of course, the parking lot and People's Park and
Yeah, and
not to mention the disruption to Indiana
Yeah,
Avenue.
the current tunnel goes basically, I'm told, basically right up to the foundation of the Von Lee. So there'll be some challenging work to be done there.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
I had a question about, you mentioned that the digesters wouldn't be converted over to anaerobic at Dillman. Is this a result of starting to look into the possibility of methane capture and that study? Is it
Well, this-
impacted by that at all?
At Dillman, the issue at Dillman is that, and I said it wouldn't be at Dillman. We did a study a few years ago looking at the viability of anaerobic digestion at Dillman. And the problem is, in order to switch, we would have to essentially replumb the whole facility in order to make that happen, which would be in the $30 to $40 million range just to do the digestion. So that's a pretty expensive fix, and it really wouldn't do anything for our capacity there at the plant. However, given that, and the real issue there is that there wouldn't be much of a benefit to us because we already have digesters. You know, replacing a digester with a different digester isn't a very big benefit. If we had no digesters, it would be viable probably. One day we're going to have to expand that plant again, and the idea that we have in mind is that one day in the future, if we're going to take that plant to a $25 million gallon per day capacity, at that point, it would probably be cost effective to convert the existing digesters for aeration and then build anaerobic digesters alongside. So that's one of the ideas for how we might go forward in the next go-round. But at the current rate of growth and demand there, we're looking at 15 to 20 years before we get there.
You got my follow-up question too. All right, thank you. Other questions for staff while we're here? Okay, thank you, Vic. The last order of business before adjournment is petitions and communications. Any petitions or communications from anyone? All right, do we have a motion for adjournment?
So moved.
We are adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.